And The Cell, which is a crazy ass movie, and if you have never watched it, is absolutely incredible and incredibly underappreciated.
There's only one part I remember of that movie is where she rips off the dude's nipple piercings, and that still sticks in my head. And it also helps me get erection at times, but it's very visually visceral.
You're super sexual this episode, and I'm not mad at it. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Geek Seat with Ben Cleaver. And remember, if you're watching us on YouTube or any other video platform, hit like, hit subscribe, comment down below, let us know what you think of the show. And if you're listening to us, congratulations, you found us on one of the many podcasting websites we can be found on, which is pretty much anything, I think, at this point, right, Detective Artemis?
Yeah, pretty much. Also, I guess I shall introduce myself. I am your friendly neighborhood host with the most, Detective Artemis, and I'm back here with our old buddy BK421. Ben, how's it going?
Yowza! He called me by my call sign there. I better be at my post.
This is Red 5 going in.
Right. And again, we're coming to you on the Movie Melee Network. And of course, as always, so far at least, we're coming to you from the Neft Vodka Studios. Again, thank you so much, Neft Vodka, for letting us use your studios.
Drink responsibly or I'll come and sodomize your dog.
Wow.
I went there.
That is violent and weirdly sexual for some reason against...
Of course, I gotta ask the dog if it's okay.
Bestiality. Anyway, thanks so much for tuning in today. This will be our last show. No, I'm kidding. We have a great show for you today. We're really excited. This is one thing that both Detective Artemis and I are super passionate about.
What are we talking about today?
We are going to be talking about movie soundtracks, particularly movie scores and the people who write them. And this is something that has been a huge impact on me for pretty much ever. Wouldn't you say, Detective Artemis?
Absolutely. I love film and I love music, and they go together well. And I got a treble clef sticking out of my pants right now like you wouldn't believe. And I know Ben can see it right now.
Wow. Again, oddly sexual, but that's okay. Let's jump in. Let's talk about do you remember, like, when you were young going to see movies or watching them at home or whatever? What was something that all of a sudden you were like, oh, this music is hitting me. This is... You know, was it like Star Wars or what was it?
Well, it's pretty easy to say because this can easily be a John Williams tribute episode. So I'm going to go and say John Williams, Star Wars, oh, for sure. E.T., all that great stuff. And he's pretty much done like almost every theme song you can think of as in your childhood. So yeah, I'm going to start with John Williams. What about you, sir?
I think John Williams has to be up there at the top and probably the most influential for me as far as my appreciation of the soundtrack or the score for feature films. There are also so many other composers out there who as I was researching for this episode, I was like, oh yeah, he wrote that and he wrote that. And it's mostly men. So far, at least. I know that women are coming up a lot more in soundtrack writing.
That's good.
Although some of the classic movies like Tron and a lot of the early electronic soundtracks were done by women. I know that. Today, I've got a list of, like I said, mostly men, but we're not focusing on who wrote these as much as we're focusing on the movies they are and how they made us feel. But let's just jump in on John Williams first.
I would love to jump in on John Williams. I don't care how old he is. Let's do it.
Well, he's almost 100 years old, so...
Fuck yeah, he knows some stuff for sure.
He is skilled. First of all, Williams, of course, has done anything by Spielberg or Lucas.
Exactly, yeah.
Basically. Which
frequent collaborators.
Which are going to be, if we're looking at the Star Wars theme, any music from the Star Wars franchise up until the last few years. He officially retired from writing Star Wars music after Episode 9,
right,
The Rise of Skywalker. Although a lot of his themes are still being used in more Disney Star Wars content as they move forward because they're so, ubiquitous with the franchise.
Whether it's an actual complete score, just a little motif of a score. It's unavoidable. It's so associated with the characters of the franchise that it's impossible to do it without it.
But if we're looking at the music that Williams wrote that's so recognizable, we can go all the way back to pre-Star Wars, to the 70s. We're looking at one of the most famous themes and one of the simplest themes of all time.
Yeah, I know what you're going at, but lay it on me. What is it?
Oh, this would be the Jaws theme from the 1975 film, which I believe was called Jaws, based
correct.
off of the novel.
Yes, it was based off a book. A lot of people tend to forget that, but it was based off a book.
And indeed. And I remember watching, I think it was a making of or some sort of behind the scenes documentary where they were talking about John Williams coming to Steven Spielberg initially with, here's what I came up with.
Yeah.
And he was like, he played it on a piano. He's like,
Right.
and Spielberg was like, okay, what's the rest of it? And he's
Wait,
like, no,
serious?
that's basically it.
2 notes. It's an ENF, in case you're wondering. This man got an Oscar with 2 notes. That's pretty fucking badass. You got an Oscar for 2 notes and a very, very cool soundtrack. And I like how those 2 notes have that menacing feel to it. And now it's very iconic for sure.
I believe it's a minor second for those of you with masters in music out
Man
there.
after my own heart.
And again, of course, the E and the F, 2 rare instances of 2 white keys on the keyboard without a black key in the middle of them. So
I love this guy. This guy's great.
I've had extensive musical experience.
Oh,
my friend.
fantastic.
We'll go out for a beer after this.
Are you a musician as well?
Absolutely, 100%.
What do you play?
A lot of things.
Whoa.
I took piano for a decade. I played guitar. I played bass. I played tuba, oddly enough.
Yeah, I think we're probably going to start our own band after this because I'm also a guitar player.
You know what I want to do? I want to get a job in a mariachi band because they're always looking for tuba players.
And then you get free tacos.
Right?
I'm in.
Tacos, bro. But we're not here to talk about tacos. We're here to
We don't want to talk about it.
That was awful. That was worse than your sexual innuendo jokes.
Sorry.
So yes, Jaws, minor second, bum 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 bum, wins an Oscar, and becomes, you know, and this is just the, not necessarily the start, but very early on in his journey as one of the greatest film score composers of all time.
Sure.
Look at some of these titles on here. Obviously, came up with the Star Wars theme, not only the theme but all the music for the franchise.
Yep.
Moving
Imperial
on.
March.
Moving on to talk, the Imperial March. Let's take a second to talk about the Imperial March. I mean, first of all, I have the Imperial March on my workout music playlist, right? Because it's badass.
It's
like
fucking cool.
Right? It gets you jazzed. And then I like the concept of being like, here is the theme music for the evil galactic empire, the most powerful, most sinister force in the entire galaxy. Now watch this part. It's the part with the high strings and the flutes. That's in the middle there, right? And but it works.
It worked, and it debuted in Empire Strikes Back. Not a
Absolutely.
New Hope.
No. And that is one of the things. And then I loved the kind of the repeat of it again when you go into Attack of the Clones episode 2.
Right.
They drop it in at the end when the clone Star Destroyers, I know they're not called Star Destroyers, but I can't think of what they're called. But the clone cruisers are lifting off. Boom, that Imperial. And that was great foreshadowing for, you know, what we knew was coming in the series. And I think that's one of the great things that makes movie score composing so wonderful, is because it is part of telling the story. You know,
Right.
You're foreshadowing things that are to come with the music, or you're repeating themes from earlier.
Motifs.
Exactly, motifs. But you think of all this great stuff that he did in Star Wars, Leia's theme, you have Yoda's theme.
Oh my God, the twin sons.
The twin sons, the binary sunset.
Yes, I still cry every time Luke looks at those 2 sons and like, he thinks to himself, I am destined for so much more. And I can resonate with that because every day I look outside and see 2 sons and think, all right, I'm stuck here.
Right. And I'll even fill you in on it. Here's a fun fact about me.
Let's do it.
My wife and I, first of all, our wedding anniversary is May the 4th.
Okay, that's pretty cool.
And for our recessional at the end of our wedding ceremony, when we walked out, it was the throne room music from the end of A New Hope.
That's what my wife and I are going to do, actually. So that's pretty cool.
Nice. There you go. And you have my permission.
Thank you.
as
sir.
well as John Williams, I assume.
Great. Also, speaking of John Williams, my wife and I actually got to see him at the Hollywood Bowl a few years ago, and he played all the hits. It was great. I saw him. He was alive, very much alive, still there. It was just very humid, and I was sweating profusely, but damn it, it was a great memory, and it was a great night.
It's worth it to be able to see John Williams direct an orchestra live.
Yes.
Which I've also
absolutely.
done at the Hollywood Bowl.
Fuck yeah.
And again, he's playing all his hits, and that's not just Star Wars. We've got a list right here of all this stuff. You know, it's Jaws, it's Star Wars, it's Indiana Jones. Again, anything
Potter,
by
all that
anything
stuff.
by Spielberg or Lucas. Harry Potter, E.T. the Extraterrestrial, Home Alone 1 and 2.
Fuck, man, that's the greatest Christmas song.
But even like heavy stuff, Schindler's List, Amistad, and of course one of the greatest superhero themes, the original Superman theme from the 70s.
Right.
And he did the music for Superman 1 through 4.
Even 4?
Even the bad ones.
Even with, was it Atomic Man or Radiation
Something
Man?
like that. I don't even remember. I think I saw half of it one time when I was 10. But, you know, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, Spielberg.
Great one.
The Olympics. He wrote a bunch of music for the Olympics that they use every 2 years when it's the Summer or the Winter Olympics and they come around.
Fucking cool.
The Olympic theme, the bum, ba, 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 that one. Saving Private Ryan, Munich, Minority Report, Hook, if you remember Hook, The Patriot, and again, anything that Spielberg or Lucas touches, Williams is in on it. And so definitely up there as one of the greatest film score composers of all time. And again, as of recording this podcast, he's in his late 90s?
Probably mid, I would say.
Mid 90s. And so we unfortunately, just because we're being realistic, we're going to lose this man in the next decade or less. And that breaks my heart. But he has had just an
absolute living legend.
He is an absolute living legend, and he has had an incredible career, and we are so thankful that he has constructed so much of the soundtrack of our lives.
Our
growing up.
childhood, it's all there.
For those of us who are millennials, who were kids in the 90s. And,
I'm a boomer.
You're a boomer?
I'm a boomer.
Wait, how old are you?
35.
That is not a boomer.
Oh,
That is
okay.
absolutely not a boomer.
Okay, cool.
This idiot. Anyway, but for those of us that are millennials, elder millennials, I believe I'm referred to as a geriatric millennial.
Oh.
So thanks.
I'm starting to get knee aches, so I think I might be there too.
Oh, I've had that for years, but I played college sports, so
I don't have an excuse.
So obviously John Williams, so much of the soundtrack of our childhood and growing up years, and has formed what I think of in my head as what a movie soundtrack should be. However, he was not a one-man show. He was not the only name in town. We have other ones, and the other one I'm going to hit right off the bat here after John Williams. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. Danny Elfman,
Fuck yeah.
friend.
Beetlejuice, Batman, Jesus fucking Christ. That tune is just so associated with the character for so long that it's just, I don't know, I don't want to keep saying iconic, but damn it, it's fucking iconic.
It is iconic, and that's the thing. He went along with this concept of the superhero theme, like a recognizable theme for a superhero.
Right.
You hear John Williams' Superman score, you know that is Superman. That's Superman's theme music. You hear the Batman theme by Danny Elfman, you know that is Batman's theme. And of course, it got blown up not only from the 1989 and 1992 Tim Burton movies, but then the animated series, which ran for so long, throughout the 90s. And
it's just the perfect score for Batman. It's heroic, it's uplifting, it's dark, it's sad, it's brooding, it's everything that it encompasses Batman as a character, and it's just perfect.
But listen to some of these other titles that Danny Elfman said. By the way, Oingo Boingo, let's address that. First of all, Danny Elfman in the band Oingo Boingo before, Dead Man's Party, before composing these, and even through it, because I've seen him at the Hollywood Bowl as well.
How was that?
It was great. So he directed the Nightmare Before Christmas soundtrack, which he also wrote.
Of course. And sang.
He was the singing voice of Jack Skellington. Mm-hmm. And then at the end of it, they did Dead Man's Party by Oingo Boingo. Boy Oingo Boingo. And And at first I was like, Danny Elfman thinks he is a rock star because he was in this band and he was the singer.
Yeah, right. It was so weird to see him like performing at Coachella.
Right.
You know, like fucking with his tattoos and shit. And like, oh yeah, he was a rock star.
He's a rock star.
He's got his cred. He's got it.
Not only a rock star, but also a great movie composer. But listen to some of these other titles. Like you mentioned, Beetlejuice. Again, anything Tim Burton touched, Danny Elfman was there for him. Pee-wee's Big Adventure, Tim Burton's first feature film.
Edward Scissorhands.
One
of the best Christmas movies.
But also Scrooged, Dick Tracy, Darkman. We already mentioned The Nightmare Before Christmas. The Frighteners, Mars Attacks.
I didn't know Frighteners.
The Frighteners, absolutely. Mars Attacks, another Tim Burton. Mission Impossible, the first Tom Cruise Mission Impossible film.
Okay.
Men in Black, Good Will Hunting, Sleepy Hollow, Tim
Hollow.
Burton. Love Sleepy Hollow. We should do an episode on that.
Yep.
Planet of the Apes, the Tim Burton one. Spider-Man, Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 1 and 2.
I hear it in my head right now.
Oh, absolutely. Hulk, the original Eric Bana Hulk.
The angly one?
The first Hulk movie in the CG era.
I didn't know that was him.
Yeah. The Goosebumps movie with Jack Black.
Okay.
Avengers Age of Ultron, he did the soundtrack for that. Justice League, he did the Zack Snyder Justice League film. He did the soundtrack for that. The Netflix series Wednesday, again, Tim Burton produced.
Yeah.
He did Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. Sam Raimi, of course, then again. Just so much iconic stuff. And I think one of the big things is you look at a lot of, and I know he did Age of Ultron, but you look at a lot of the Avengers movies right now, and you don't have, you don't hear the Iron Man theme, right? You don't really hear the Captain America theme or the Black Widow theme or the Hawkeye theme as a movie score. The only one I could say, and I'm going to have to look up the composer, but Thor has recognizable theme music in particularly in The Dark World, which is a movie I like and everybody else hates.
It was okay.
But the theme, the main score theme in that was incredible. And I'm going to take just a second right now and look up who composed that, because I can't think of it off the top of my head. Okay, so I looked it up. It is Brian Tyler who composed the score for Thor: The Dark World, and I'm looking at what he's done. Interesting. He's done Bubba Hotep.
Well, real quick, going back to Danny Elfman, he also did the theme song for The Simpsons.
That's right. I totally forgot about that. He absolutely wrote one of the most iconic television, if not the most iconic television theme songs of all time.
Yep, it's the Elfman.
Brian Tyler's done a ton of movies. Iron Man 3, Now You See Me. He did Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the 2014.
Oh, okay. I was like, not the 90s one, sir.
No, not the 90s ones. Expendables 3. He also worked on Avengers Age of Ultron, but that was, I think, because they used part of the Thor score. Anyway.
Thor score. I appreciate the
Thor
rhyme.
Score. There you go. But that is really across the Avengers, the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I cannot think of any themes apart from Thor's music and the Avengers theme song from the first Avengers.
Do you know
movie.
who did the theme for the first Avengers? It breaks my heart. Here we go. I was hoping we mention him. Alan Silvestri.
Oh, Alan Silvestri, of course.
Yes, dude. He also did Predator. He did Back to the Future, which is one of the best scores of all time, 1000%.
This is true. I apologize for leaving him off the list.
Alan Silvestri, yes. He is definitely one of the best composers as well.
As long as we're in the vein of looking at other composers, let's take a look at one of the more modern, I think I'll say, although if we look at Danny Elfman and John Williams, obviously John Williams retired, but Danny Elfman still writing stuff, but has been doing it for a long time.
Right.
More recently-ish, like let's say Danny Elfman's been doing it for 40 years. This next guy's been doing it for less than 40 years, and that's Hans Zimmer.
Hans fucking Zimmer. I love this guy.
Of course, has done his own version of Batman in the Dark Knight trilogy.
He did the impossible by making another distinctive Batman theme that's still pretty cool and captures the main essence of Batman, but done in a different way. So that was pretty sure no easy feat for him to do.
Absolutely. And that's was only one aspect of how incredible the Dark Knight trilogy was in and of itself, of how do you take what has already been established as such a franchise, both as a film and as a music score from Danny Elfman, and do a new spin on it, and do a new take on it that's good.
And it just worked.
And all of the movements or tracks or whatever you want to call them from the Batman Begins soundtrack are named after I believe they're the Latin names of different species of bat.
Molossus.
So Molossus is the most recognizable theme from that. A lot of them take other, they take themes off of that one, but Molossus, that's the
right. It was Zimmer and James Newton Howard, I believe, who did that.
And just an incredible soundtrack. That one also on my workout playlist, especially if you are the type of person that goes for a run. And I've gained a lot of weight and my knees are trash, so I haven't done it in a while. But when I used to run, because I used to run half marathons, when I was training, you pump that into your earbuds and you are just focused. You are the Batman and you are running, and it doesn't matter what your body's doing. But let's look at some of these other pieces, some of these other films that Hans Zimmer has worked on. Interstellar, obviously, we're looking at anything Christopher Nolan has done.
Pretty much, yep.
Gladiator, Dune, the new Dune film.
Oh, okay.
Inception, again, Christopher Nolan.
Yeah.
But The Lion King, he did the soundtrack for The Lion King.
It's because of him I cried when Mufasa died.
Exactly. And so you don't think of like, oh, the guy who did the Dark Knight trilogy also wrote all the music except for the Elton John music, all the music for The Lion King, which was, again, as guys our age, as elder millennials, such men of a certain age, such an impact on our childhood. But again, let's look at this. The Da Vinci Code, The Prince of Egypt.
I forgot about that movie.
No Time to Die, the James Bond film. Pirates of the Caribbean.
Dude, the soundtrack of those movies are so good.
Again, a completely recognizable theme. You do not, if you hear the song He's a Pirate, it's from, there are no words. It's just instrumental, but it's from Pirates of the Caribbean. That is the Pirates of the Caribbean theme.
There's just a specific style to him.
Oh, absolutely. But it's even beyond the style. It's creating a recognizable theme. The Ring, Black Hawk Down, 12 Years a Slave, The Rock, Cool Runnings. I didn't realize he did the soundtrack to Cool Runnings.
What the hell?
Kung Fu Panda. And it's so diverse, the different types of movies he's doing.
I see a very particular movie missing that actually had a really good soundtrack, and it was Man of Steel.
Oh, freaking A. I forgot about Man of Steel.
Dude, that whole flight song where he's learning to fly, those fucking drums, man. It was so good.
And again, very recognizable. When I hear that music, I recognize it as Man of Steel, which is a very complicated movie in its own right as far as my opinions are concerned.
But at least the music was good.
But the music was great.
There's no argument on that.
I'm not entirely mad at Man of Steel. Like the rest of the Snyderverse, there's a lot of stuff that I take issue with the Snyderverse. Man of Steel I have some problems with, but there's some stuff I just absolutely love about it. And part of it is the soundtrack.
Another episode for another day, but for sure we will tackle the Snyderverse, and I'm looking forward to that.
I want to go back in time a little bit. Not Back to the Future, which we already mentioned. But I want to go to a man with a very difficult name to spell, Ennio Morricone. Did I say that right? Did I even say that right? Is it Morricone or Morricone? Let me look at the
script here. Ben
Morricone or Morricone?
The name. Art laughs. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, sounds right.
Artemis laughs.
I'm also illiterate, so I don't know.
But this is going back to before our time, before either of us were born.
Let's do it.
And we're looking at the classic spaghetti westerns of the 60s and even a little bit into the 70s. But we're looking at, of course, the Good and the Bad and the Ugly trilogy, A Fistful of Dollars, A Few Dollars More, and The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. Once Upon a Time in the West, one of my favorite Western films. Charles Bronson as Harmonica, the man with no name, basically.
Charles Bronson.
And I have it on DVD. It's from back in the 60s when they were like, we'll make a 9-hour movie. It's fine. It's on 2 DVDs. The movie is literally on 2 DVDs. But again, Morricone wrote that. Hateful Eight continued into modern era because he just died within the last 15 years, I think. Hateful Eight, The Untouchables, Kill Bill Volume 1, Django Unchained, a lot of Tarantino for his orchestral scores.
Well, hang on, he did The Thing?
The Thing, along with John Carpenter.
Okay, yeah. Okay, I know that.
Yeah. And Lolita, which is an old movie that I've actually never seen, but I just know it's really famous. Speaking of John Carpenter.
Segue.
On, great segue there, thanks to me. Congratulations, Ben. That was a good job. Why, thank you, Ben. Again, John Carpenter, one of these guys that he's kind of an overall like creative type. So he's like writing, directing, doing the music, all that kind of stuff. Of course, the original Halloween theme, unbelievably recognizable. And of course that was used in the reboot / sequel Halloween that came out a few years ago. But also did The Fog, the score for The Fog, Escape from New York, Halloween 3, Season of the Witch, bonkers movie, but love it.
It was definitely out there.
Out of left field. And that's an interesting thing we should do a show on, a different show on another time. But soundtrack to Christine, Big Trouble in Little China, which is just a fantastic film as well.
Yep.
They Live.
And Assault on Precinct 13.
Assault on Precinct 13. I did not write that one down, but I knew that.
I noticed. I saw. I got you.
That was on the list, and for whatever reason, I didn't write it down. But
it's a great movie.
They Live, of course.
I love They Live. That whole alley fight scene was like 10 minutes long. They're just like slugging it out. Great.
I actually got to shake Roddy Piper's hand one time.
I'm not jealous.
Yes, you are.
I'm very jealous.
You're absolutely jealous.
God damn it.
It was just a couple years before he passed away, too.
Dude.
So that was a crazy opportunity for me.
Real quick, can we just hear a little story of that?
Oh, absolutely. So I know this might be hard to believe, being that I host a show called The Geek Seat, but I've done quite a bit of cosplay in my day.
What a fucking nerd.
Right? And one of my favorite cosplays to do, and one that I got pegged for before I even did it, and people were like, you need to do this.
You said pegged?
Pegged.
Okay.
Pegged.
Got it.
In a shut up. Anyway, one that people were like, you should do this cosplay was Liev Schreiber's version of Sabretooth from Wolverine Origins. Yeah.
Pretty dope.
And so I ran around with this guy named Lon Brown, who does a really great Hugh Jackman Wolverine. And we would run around at comic book conventions dressed as Wolverine and Sabretooth from the Origins film.
Okay.
And we went out to, and this was a number of years ago. This had to be something like 2015, I want to say.
Okay.
And we went out to, what's the place out east of Pasadena? Frankensons.
Sure.
We went to Frankensons.
That sounds cool.
And for those of you who don't know, Frankensons is kind of like... it's basically a big warehouse shop that opens up on the weekends.
Oh shit! Yeah, okay, now I know.
Yeah,
it's packed every time we go.
And it's like it's basically the dealer's hall from a comic book convention.
Oh, man, I want to go in there.
It's just a bunch of sellers selling collectibles and that kind of thing. The type of stuff that you would get in the dealer's hall of a comic book convention.
What was it like inside? What did it smell like?
Nerd sweat.
Oh, okay, so bad.
Yeah. So, but it's you kind of love it at the same time.
Yeah.
So we were in there and dressed as Sabretooth and Wolverine, and we had a buddy of ours along who was a photographer taking some pictures of us, and then we'd walk around and kind of look at stuff, and then people would stop us to take pictures. And for whatever reason, that particular Saturday, I want to say, Roddy Piper was there making an appearance, signing autographs, etc., walking around taking pictures with people, and we happened upon him. And he's wearing the Hot Rod t-shirt and the kilt.
Yep.
And somebody was like, hey, you guys want to meet Roddy Piper? And I was like, yes, I want to meet Roddy Piper. Is that
a question?
Yeah. And so we went up, we had some small talk with him. I got to shake his hand and moved on with our lives. That's kind of how most of those encounters go.
Right.
But
it's still pretty cool.
For those of us who are fans, and I love They Live. I love professional wrestling. I'm not into it as much now as I used to be, but of course I loved Roddy Piper. I knew who he was, and it was a really great opportunity to be able to shake his hand. And then a couple years later, he was gone, which is awful. But it was a great opportunity, a great memory for me. So
that's pretty rad.
Really, really happy about that.
He was also in one of my favorite episodes of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
Oh my gosh.
Where he was the maniac. Sunny. But yeah, anyways, back to movie scores. Thank you for that good story though, Ben.
Nice little rabbit trail there, but we'll go back. The next name.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
Well, no, go ahead.
I was gonna say the next name I have on the list is Detective Artemis.
I am not a composer by any means, but we are talking about Howard Shore.
Yeah,
Howard Shore.
I was throwing it to you. I was saying the next name is Detective Artemis.
Right, yeah.
Not saying the next name is Detective Artemis.
I'm just kind of
How many movies have you scored?
Let's see. Do like home movies count?
Sure.
Like sex tapes?
No.
Then no, I got none.
Okay. Howard Shore, of course, composer of one of my favorite trilogies. One of my favorite trilogies. I can't talk. Howard Shore, of course, the composer of one of my favorite trilogies, The Lord of the Rings. And this, for me, The Lord of the Rings impacted me, I imagine, like somebody who was in their teens when the original Star Wars came out. Like, obviously, Star Wars is my first love.
Right.
But Lord of the Rings came out when I was like, I want to say a freshman in high school, maybe. And of course, everything about it was epic. The visual effects, the acting, the writing,
the walking,
the length of the films. But on top of all that, the score for the films, incredible.
Very good.
And that is all Howard Shore. And that is another one where you hear the music from The Hobbit, especially something like the Shire theme or something like that. That is, you are like, boom, that's The Hobbit. Or not The Hobbit, I'm sorry. That's The Lord of the Rings. I know that. However, Howard Shore also composed the music for The Hobbit. But
all they had to do was just fly, you fools.
Fly, you fools.
Sorry, go ahead.
There is a whole subreddit on why that's not the case, but that's not what we're here to talk about today. But not only did Howard Shore did not show up for Lord of the Rings, and that was his first rodeo. You know, we've also got Silence of the Lambs.
Great
movie, and would not be as great without a great soundtrack. That's not something you're like, oh, I know this song. It's from Silence of the Lambs. You just know that the music in that movie enhances it so much. And that's also part of a great soundtrack. Not necessarily recognizing the music from it, but the fact that the music enhances the experience and you aren't even aware of it. Similar to one of my favorite movies, The Game.
With Michael Douglas?
With Michael Douglas. Oh my gosh, such a good movie.
I strive to be like him as a husband.
But also, again, anything by Peter Jackson. You know, we talked about John Williams, Danny Elfman, Hans Zimmer, working with the same directors over and over again. Peter Jackson got Howard Shore for Lord of the Rings, Hobbit, King Kong. What else is in there from Peter Jackson? I don't know, but one of my favorite movies, The Fly. The freaking Fly with Jeff Goldblum.
Yep.
One of my favorite actors, if not my favorite actor. No, I'd say he's my second favorite actor. Is he?
I can't tell by the shirt you're wearing,
right.
Sir.
I think he's my second favorite actor after Gary Oldman.
I love that you said Gary Oldman because he's one of my favorite actors of all time.
Right.
He's done everything.
He has done it. He's literally, talk about range. But also we get Howard Shore. Seven.
Oh, with my dad, Brad Pitt. Great movie.
I'm Brad Pitt's cousin. Just kidding. That's not true. That's a Macklemore song. Seven. Scanners.
When his head blows up.
Right. The movie Big.
Piano scene every time.
One of my favorite franchises, but he did the soundtrack for Dogma. And The Cell, which is a crazy ass movie. And if you have never watched it, is absolutely incredible and incredibly underappreciated.
There's only one part I remember of that movie is where she rips off the dude's nipple piercings, and that still sticks in my head. And it also helps me get erection at times, but it's very visually visceral.
You're super sexual this episode, and I'm not mad at it. We've got a few more names to mention here in our show about movie scores because there are just so many good ones, but I want to mention John Barry, who composed the original James Bond theme, which
talk about iconic.
Iconic, absolutely iconic. Also did most of the original James Bond films through the 70s and even the 80s, but he also did Dances with Wolves, which is an incredible film.
The original Avatar.
Right. Exactly. After was that before or after Fern Gully? Anyway, he also did the soundtrack for the 1976 King Kong movie. He did The Deep, The Black Hole, which is one of my favorite boring sci-fi movies of all time, as well as the original Howard the Duck.
Oh, duck titties.
Duck titties. That's another tack on our little counter.
Duck boobs.
Duck boobs. Wow. Wow.
I'm on fire, and that's just not the pee.
Oh, well, there you go. Oh, man. You're racking up points on our counter. Next up on the list is a name you may or may not be familiar with, but you are definitely familiar with his music. That's Jerry Goldsmith. I know I'm familiar with Jerry's name, but it's not as big as John Williams or Danny Elfman. But listen to some of these titles that he's worked on. First of all, horror, Poltergeist 1 and 2, The Omen. He did the original Planet of the Apes.
Ooh.
He did First Blood, Rambo, and Rambo 3. He did Mulan, the Disney animated film Mulan.
Yeah, I love how you name all these horror movies and you get to Mulan.
And then again, another incredibly recognizable theme that brings me to tears every time. Rudy. You ever want to watch me weep uncontrollably? Sit down and watch the movie Rudy with me.
What an underdog movie. I want to lift you up just like how they lifted him up.
Exactly.
Although I can't do it. I'm just one person.
In a similar vein, Hoosiers. Very similar vein of sports film. Gremlins 1 and 2. La 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 la. One of my favorite Christmas movies, of course.
For sure.
He did most of the pre-Abrams Star Trek films.
Con.
And then Legend, of course, a legendary movie.
It's a weak pun, but I love it.
Oh well. Alien, the first Alien. One of the greatest films of all time, 1999's The Mummy with Brendan Fraser and Rachel Weisz.
One of the best popcorn movies you can ever watch.
I can watch that movie at any time on any day. I don't care what time of year it is. If you're like, do you want to watch 1999's The Mummy starring Brendan Fraser and Rachel Weisz? I will say absolutely yes, 100%. Let's do that right now.
Every now and then I'll laugh to myself thinking about when Benny is praying to all these different gods when the movie's getting him. It still cracks me up.
And historical, like when he starts praying in Hebrew, like he recognizes it as the language of the Hebrew slaves in Egypt, that was a crazy kind of like interesting historical note.
Oh, great movie.
Total Recall with Schwarzenegger.
3 boobs.
Again, 3 boobs. That's the first Total Recall, not the reboot. With
Colin Farrell.
Colin Farrell. Star Trek First Contact, which moved him into the Next Generation series of Star Trek films. Again, one of the movies that messed us all up as a kid, The Secret of Nim. The Burbs, which is also a fantastic movie.
I love Tom Hanks.
Logan's Run, classic sci-fi.
Yep.
Small Soldiers, which I really liked when it came out, particularly because when I was a kid and a tween, I had a huge crush on Kirsten Dunst.
Do you think Small Soldiers can be remade or like have a legacy sequel today? Because it feels like it would make so much sense with today's technology.
I absolutely think that would. I totally think they could and should do that. Get Tommy Lee Jones back to do the voice. Absolutely.
I would love to see the Gorgons again.
And then First Night.
What is that?
That's a freaking Sean Connery movie, man.
Oh shit, Sean Connery.
Connery, First Night.
Oh, look at my dick.
What?
He told it to me once.
He did not.
Sorry.
Hold on. First Night. I just want to show you this. 1995, First Night, Sean Connery, adventure romance, 2 hours, 14 minutes, 71% on Google, 6 out of 10 on IMDb. 43% on Rotten Tomatoes, but still a mid-90s classic, in my opinion.
I do not care whatever Rotten Tomatoes says because they are just terrible people.
Okay, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 more names on the list.
Lay it on me.
The next one I want to talk about is James Horner.
I love James Horner.
James Horner. Listen to some of these titles.
The late James Horner.
The late James Horner. Listen to some of these titles. Titanic.
Oof.
Huge. Braveheart. Casper. Movie I loved as a kid. Still watch around Halloween now.
Still good.
Can I keep you? Apollo 13. Avatar. The first Avatar. Willow. The original Willow. Field of Dreams. An American Tale and Fievel Goes West.
Okay, I know Fievel Goes West. I still cry.
The Mask of Zorro with Antonio Banderas. And Catherine Zeta-Jones, of course. The Amazing Spider-Man.
Oh, yeah, I love it. I still hear those tunes every day. The use of the trumpets. I love it.
I really like The Amazing Spider-Man.
Do you?
I do.
Fuck yeah, man. I love this guy.
I love Andrew Garfield as Peter Parker.
Another
I really
episode,
do.
but I'm ready to let loose on that.
Another similar to The Secret of Nim, another movie that screwed us all up as kids.
Don't say it.
The Land Before Time,
God
my
damn
friend.
It, you said it.
The Land Before Time.
I'm not crying.
Again, another connection to Jerry Goldsmith. He did Aliens.
Oh shit! Okay.
The follow-up, the sequel, and of course James Cameron, another connection, did Titanic. He also did Jumanji.
Huh.
Again, another Kirsten Dunst flick, which all those from the mid to late 90s, any movie Kirsten Dunst was in, burned into my brain. Huge crush on her.
I'm sure.
Also did Cocoon, Star Trek 3, The Search for Spock, and another one that I absolutely love, The Rocketeer.
Beloved.
Great music. The next name on the list just has one major contribution that I wanted to highlight. It's Henry Mancini, who created the original Pink Panther theme that was used in the cartoon, which I grew up watching.
Yeah, keep going.
As well as the Pink Panther movies with Peter Sellers. Bernard Herrmann, of course, Psycho.
Oh, yeah.
But many of these classics that
Alfred Hitchcock. Him and the cock.
Okay, that's another tick on the counter. Vertigo, Citizen Kane, Psycho, North by Northwest, Taxi Driver, The Day the Earth Stood Still, Jason and the Argonauts, Journey to the Center of the Earth, all the classics, not the remakes, the originals.
No Rear Window? Rear Window? Did he not do that one?
I think he did Rear Window. I think I probably left it off.
One of my favorite movies of all time.
Listen, I was compiling this list blackout drunk at 3 o'clock in the morning. So
that's how you do it. Respect.
Another composer. I got a little bit of a story about this because, listen, the next name on the list is Philip Glass, who's a freaking weirdo.
I like weirdos.
And I love him for it. One of these soundtracks, I need to watch this movie again because I probably haven't watched it in, 20 years. The Truman Show.
So good.
I love The Truman Show, and the music in The Truman Show is so good and so effective in the storytelling of the film. And so I was compiling this list. I'm like, wait, who wrote the soundtrack to The Truman Show? Oh, it's Philip Glass, who also wrote all this crazy-ass music, including one of my favorite themes, which is Koya Naskatsi, which is part of a trilogy of really weird experimental films with names I can't even pronounce because I didn't write them down. But Koya Naskatsi, the theme from it was actually used in an episode of Scrubs, which I really enjoyed, and it really played into the comedic effect. But he also did the soundtracks for Candyman, the original Candyman.
All right.
And the 2015 Fantastic Four film.
Less said about that movie, the better.
True. But he wrote the music for it.
I'm sure that was the best part of it.
And then the last name on our list today is somebody who we could not, a bit of a godfather, I was going to say.
1000%. Go ahead. What is his name?
The granddaddy of them all as far as movie scores and soundtracks. That's Max Steiner, who did such famous classics as the soundtrack to Casablanca.
One of my favorites.
Gone with the Wind, and the original King Kong.
Yes.
Which I grew up watching the original King Kong. Other folks on this list grew up listening to the original King Kong. We're looking at is it? Howard Shore, wrote the soundtrack for King Kong. Anything Peter Jackson was so influenced by the original King Kong. And that does not just stop at the visuals. That includes the music and the effects and all that kind of stuff. And so without trailblazers like Max Steiner, we would not have had
John Williams. You can
Danny Elfman.
You can clearly hear John Williams' inspiration,
Absolutely.
especially watching Casablanca, very similar to Star Wars. When they're inside the club, you can hear the cantina influence, and then it even looks like the Mos Eisley bar too. So George Lucas clearly got some inspiration from that as well. So it's a real testament for Max Steiner to influence people we know and love like John Williams. So yes, 1000% respect to Max Steiner.
Well, and Max established that idea of what an epic movie soundtrack should be.
Right.
And, because it's not just fucking kazoos and xylophones.
We need more kazoos now that you mention it.
No, we don't. We absolutely do not.
I do.
But it's that sweeping orchestral sound that we get from composers now like John Williams, Danny Elfman, Hans Zimmer, Howard Shore, all these guys, and now women, thank God, and trans people and non-binary people. I do want to talk about that. There is an incredible contribution by all kinds of people to movie soundtracks. These are just some of, in our limited time on a podcast, some of the huge names that we just knew we had to cover. And but I think suffice to say, so many of these people are so talented that they were able to write music that they could then put in front of an orchestra of people playing different instruments and create a sound that, as we were sitting in a movie theater, affected us to our core. And that is what movie soundtracks do to us, and that is why they are so amazing. And that's why we dedicated an entire episode of the Geek Seat with Ben Cleaver to talking about movie soundtracks because they are amazing. Detective Artemis, any final words on movie soundtracks for this episode?
Let me just wipe away my tears from that pretty sweet speech, good sir. Yes, music is very important in movies. It's what half a movie is, and a lot of the music tends to go underappreciated and just sort of take it for granted. If we wouldn't have some of these movies, or the scores, I should say, we wouldn't have these great movies. One we forgot to mention was Elmer Bernstein and Ray Parker Jr. from Ghostbusters.
Oh, shit, of course.
One of the most perfect movies of all time with one of the best soundtracks and one of the best movie theme songs of all time. Without this, Ghostbusters would have had that sort of lightning capture in a bottle effect. So yes, we need music, and music is important, and music is fucking universal.
Next time, just watch a movie on mute and see how it affects you.
With subtitles, yeah.
Yeah, on mute with subtitles and see how it affects you. And even so, a real quick recall to Jerry Goldsmith. Part of what made the movie Alien so effective was its lack of music in so much of it to build tension.
Right.
And then introduction of music in key points. But yeah, if you watch a movie on mute with subtitles, it's not going to affect you the same way. You're going to get up, go to the bathroom, make a bologna sandwich, whatever you want to do. It's just not going to keep you hooked in as much as it is with that soundtrack playing.
I love bologna. I'm just going to put that on record here.
I do love bologna too. Yeah. You want to go out and get a bologna sandwich after this?
I kind of do. Oh, not just a bologna sandwich, but a double-decker bologna sandwich.
That sounds delicious.
From Troll 2.
I was going to say, we're going to go out and get some Scooby-Doo sandwiches after this.
Fuck yeah.
Detective Artemis, thank you so much for joining me today on this hostful episode of The Geek Seat with Ben Cleaver. Detective Artemis, of course, we are here on the Movie Melee Network. Thank you again so much for hosting our show. Thank you again to Neft Vodka for letting us use their studio to film our show today. Again, don't forget to like, subscribe, comment down below if there is anything in the geek universe you want us to do an episode on, talk about, any special guests you want us to have on the show. Throw it in the comments down below. For now, my name is Ben Cleaver. This has been The Geek Seat. This is Detective Artemis. Thank you so much for tuning in. You can hear us on any
available podcast platforms, YouTube. Hell, I might do some excerpts on TikTok. Also, if there's any scores that we missed that you love, or any composers that you love, also let us know in the comments down below. I will be happily
He will be
converse.
happily.
Yes.
We'll both jump in the comments.
I
We'll
will
talk
end
to you.
with an
We'll have a
adverb. Yes,
conversation.
let's do it. So once again, thanks for watching, guys.
Again, thanks so much. We'll see you next time.